a GOP candidate, Kari Lake, says that if MLK, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was alive today, he would be a Republican. And guess who claps back? Dr. King's daughter, Bernice A. King, gave a classic clap back. Here's the video.
I'm a true believer that if MLK, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. were alive today, if JFK were alive today, if our founding fathers were alive today, they would be America First Republicans. I really believe that.
Blasphemy. All right, let's go. Let's do it. Republican gubernatorial candidate, who used to be a news anchor, by the way, Kari Lake, said this ridiculous thing. Now, she is hoping to become, the next big thing in the Republican Party. She's popular with Donald Trump, obviously, and other surrogates of Trump. Now, Bernice King did respond. She responded to the comments. Here's the response. Dear Kari Lake, what you share here is false and dismissive of my daddy's seminal work and beliefs, including ending, preventing voter suppression, treating all, including immigrants, with dignity. I invite you to study my father via the KingCenterInstitute.org. Now, I'm friends with Bernice King. Been friends with Bernice for a very long time. She's a remarkable person, a great professional, an advocate, a voice to the voiceless. She does this work every day and she takes it very seriously. So when she responds, she's not responding to be hyperbolic. She's responding to open up an opportunity for conversation, because I have known her to do this before and conversation actually happened. But I guarantee you, Kari Lake is not interested in a conversation. She's not going to respond appropriately to Bernice King. She also said, Bernice King also clapped back and said, I also invite you to read these books about my father immediately if you're going to express what you believe he would think or support. I've had the great fortune of teaching a college class called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. as a social change agent. Because of me teaching that class, I had to continue to learn more and more about King, the King legacy, and also how they manipulated the words of King after his assassination. You have to remember, only 6% of white America supported Dr. King while he was alive. They basically universally hated him. So all of these good feelings about King today, well, that's because they curated some of his speeches and left out other parts they found problematic. The reality is Dr. King was radical in his belief, and it's a good thing because he was fighting a radical opposition. Background on King's views, they don't match the GOP. One of the key issues that King fought was what? Voter suppression. I'd be damned. Voter suppression. Something that the so-called America First movement has fought for in red states across the country. In one more recent story, Governor Ron DeSantis dispatched what? Election police force to arrest those who were told they could vote after the state approved reestablishing voting rights to felons. Of the 20 people arrested, 13 were black. You think Dr. King can stand for that? King also fought for dignity for immigrants. Lake calls them, and she utilized the terminology, rapist. The America First policy focuses more on a kind of nationalism that is inherently against anything not American. This quote from King wouldn't jive well with the Lake crowd or the GOP. It says, I imagine, this is King, I imagine, I already know that I am much more socialistic in my economic theory than capitalistic. And yet, I'm not opposed to capitalism, that I have failed to see its relative merits. It started out with a noble and high motive to block the trade monopolies of nobles. But like most human systems, it fell victim to the very thing it was revolting against. So today, capitalism has outlived its usefulness. It has brought about a system that takes necessities from the masses to give luxuries to the classes. Dr. King said that to Coretta Scott King in 1952. In 1952, he had this ideology. The GOP would also have an issue with this stance King took, and I quote, "At the very same time that America refused to give the Negro any land, through an act of Congress, our government was giving away millions of acres of land in the West and in the Midwest, which meant that it was willing to undergird its white peasants from Europe with an economic floor. And they are the very people telling the black man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps. And this was what we are faced with now. This is the reality. Now, when we come to Washington in this campaign, we are coming to get our check." He was talking about reparations. He preached UBI, universal basic income for African Americans. He did. So where in the policy dynamic of Dr. King's proclamations, publicly or privately, did he ever align with the values that you speak of, Ms. Lake? Stop lying to people. Damn it, stop lying on Dr. King. All right, brother, thoughts here.
You know, it would be in Kari Lake's best interest to not respond to Bernice King whatsoever, because if she does respond and respond accordingly and have the conversation, she would have to openly change her views on the political leanings of Dr. Martin Luther King. You know, we usually have to wait for Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday or Black History Month for his legacy to be whitewashed. I guess it came a little early for the rest of us. I just want to remind people that after King was assassinated, almost a third of Americans surveyed said the strongest reaction of his death that they had was that they felt like he brought it on himself. Now, you know, we've made it a point where people like Kari Lake, whose parents or grandparents likely were one of those individuals who felt like brought it on themselves. Now we're quibbling about his political ideology. Quit it, quit it. Let's move on and let's learn some other speeches that Dr. King had, with the exception of a 16-second excerpt from the I Have a Dream speech. He had a lot to say and he saw color, in particular, white people. So if they want to hang on to that, they might as well put that down. Have a conversation with Bernice King, please, Kari Lake.
Yeah, and Dr. King said at one point that America was more racist than he ever imagined. He had high hopes for America until he started to engage in the civil rights movement and realized that the cancer of America was much deeper than he ever thought.